Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment, we're going to begin the service of Mr. William Jeff Glazer. For those of you who are here, please take a moment to be sure that your cell phones have been turned off, and we welcome those of you who are joining us online. In just a moment, the family is going to enter the chapel. When they do, we'll ask everyone to rise, stand in place, and we'll be seated as one community. Rabbi Stephen Stark Lowenstein from Am Shalom will be officiating.
Okay, thanks. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid. I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side. I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exalt, my soul rejoice. My being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful ones see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. We are gathered with our friends in the shadow that has fallen on their home. We raise our voices together in prayer to the source of life, asking for comfort and strength. We need light when gloom darkens our home. To whom shall we look if not to the creator of light? We need fortitude and courage when pain and loss assail us. Where shall we find them if not in the thought of the one who preserves all that is good from destruction? Who among us has not passed through trials and bereavements? Some bear fresh wounds in their hearts and therefore feel more keenly the kinship of sorrow. Others, whose days of mourning are more remote, still recall the comfort that sympathy brought to their sorrowing hearts. All things pass. All that lives must die. All that we prize is but lent to us when the time comes when we must surrender it. We are travelers on the same road that leads to the same end. We gather here today to remember William Jeffrey Glazer, Jeff, someone who loved life, who lived life on his terms for as long as he possibly could, someone who was fun, incredibly fun, silly, loving, giving, kind, generous, someone who loved his family so very much, and we extend our deepest condolences to his entire family, to Lee, to Ben and to Jessie, to Scott, to Megan, to beautiful grandchildren in Sydney, Arianna and Louie, to brother Fred and Marilyn, to family members and friends, to those who are gathered here, to all those who were touched by his goodness, by his kindness, by his generosity, by his love. We find comfort from the words of our tradition. Psalm 121. Esai enai el ha'rim me'ayin yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard your soul, your going and coming, now and forever. We begin by making a small little tear in a ribbon. It used to be that our ancestors would tear their clothes. We no longer tear our clothes, but we make a small little tear in a ribbon to remind us of our hearts that are torn. Only direct mourners are considered responsible for wearing this ribbon. Spouses, siblings, parents, and children. Ben and Jessie, I invite the two of you to stand. To know that as you stand together, side by side with your family, there's lots of people behind you. There's lots of people next to you who love you very much, who loved your dad very much, who are here to help you along life's path. The two of you have the responsibility of wearing this ribbon that's over your heart because the connection between parent and child is so, so strong. I ask you, with David's help, to make a small little tear in the ribbon. Even the best seamstress in the world wouldn't be able to repair this ribbon without leaving a mark, to remind us that you're going to have on your heart an incredible mark of a very special person. We say these words together as a community. Baruch, Baruch, Atah, Atah, Adonai, Eloheinu, Melech Ha'olam, Dayan Ha'emet. We praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, Dayan Ha'emet, the judge of truth. For at this moment, it's God's judgment that we accept, that we acknowledge. It's God's judgment that we feel. And even though we're sad, even though we know that 75 just isn't enough time, we know that we measure lives not in time, but in grace, in the joy with which they live and the love that they leave behind. Jeff lived life his way, and that's for sure. I can't say that enough. He was his own person, and you couldn't tell him anything on how to live. And so the fact that he died on his own terms, quickly, without any pain, is a blessing. It's hard to accept, it's hard to realize, but we know that we live our dying. And when a person dies the same way that they live, while death is always difficult, it's a blessing. We find comfort from the 23rd Psalm. No matter what faith tradition we may be from, we offer this psalm, we offer these words, reminding us that together we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Adonai ro'i lo aksar v'no desha yarbitzeni. Almei menuchot yenachaleni nafshi yashovev. Yancheni b'magle tzedek lama'an shemo. Gam ke'elech bageit salmavet lo irara ki ata yimadi. Ach tov v'chesed yirdafuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'beit Adonai la'orech yamim. Together, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Rabbi Joe Black once wrote, "Those who walk through the valley of the shadows wear no shoes. Their feet are cut and torn as they stumble through the darkness. With no time to pack a bag or say goodbye, they begin their journeys unprepared. Some are dressed in finery, jewels gleaming like stars in the dim light. Others are in pajamas, work clothes, prayer shawls, bathing suits, birthday suits. Some clutch briefcases, papers, blankets, teddy bears. and everyone wears their grief. With each cautious, painful step, they move further into the abyss. The chasm narrows. Stretching out their fingers, they trace the grooves carved by previous pilgrims, handholds hewn in the cold canyon walls. Sometimes they march in silence. Other times singing hauntingly beautiful melodies. Their voices echo to the very vaults of heaven. The river that created this place does not flow from on high. It was formed and filled by the tears of those bruised souls traversing the trail. And no one walks alone. Stumbling pilgrims are quickly caught and held aloft by those who travel beside them. They are caressed and carried through the brambles and branches that, unexposed and hidden from sight, add to the chaos and confusion of the journey. In time, for some, a light appears in the distance, piercing through the veil of darkness. Hope, long buried, rises to the surface like a beacon. And with it, the weary marchers ascend to find a world that has been changed forever by their absence. They return with pale faces and broken hearts. But now, as experienced travelers, they will always have a suitcase packed and ready. I love that poem because we're all travelers on that path. Sometimes we're ready for it, sometimes we're not. Sometimes we forget to pack the bag. Sometimes it happens too soon. But we walk together, pale-faced, broken-hearted, knowing that we help each other along the way. In so many ways. Your dad, your grandfather, your father-in-law, your friend, your partner, your teammate, your coach, did just that. He helped so many people by the way he lived, by the way he loved, by the way he laughed. And we're all better off because of the way he lived in this world. Rabbi Larry Kushner reminds us that each lifetime is the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. For some of us, the puzzle is more easy to assemble. Some of us seem to be born with nearly a completed puzzle, and so it goes. Souls going this way and that, trying to assemble the myriad of parts. But no one has within themselves all the pieces to their puzzle. Like before the days when they used to seal jigsaw puzzles in cellophane, ensuring that all the pieces are there. Every one of us carries with us a piece to someone else's puzzle. Sometimes we know it, sometimes we don't. And when you present your piece, which is worthless to you, to another, whether you know it or not, whether they know it or not, you are a messenger from God Most High. Every single person in this room, every person on the live stream, every person along this path, somehow, some way got a piece of Jeff's puzzle. Sometimes it's been with us all of our lives. Sometimes we got it in passing. But no one got a bigger piece than his family. So Lee, I begin with you. I invite you to come forward to begin to pay tribute to a very special man.
Wow. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Jeff, he was a complicated character. We were a 3-decade-plus institution. Only the great memories are with me now. To know him was to know a uniquely keen humor, enormous generosity, pure, unadulterated fun, all on a grand scale. Jeff never did anything just a little bit. His assets were legendary among his colleagues. Our home in Deerfield was headquarters of the cool dad and the warm heart. The best of Jeff was as good as it gets. That's what he gave his friends of all ages. He and Scott had already begun building that bond. Jessie and Ben gave that best right back to him. When he needed them the most, his children returned his generosity boundlessly. That is true love. There's no finer legacy than that one can leave one's family. Ben, Jessie, Sydney, Ari, Louie are blessed by receiving and giving Jeff's love. For that, we are all in great gratitude. Jeff, may you rest at peace and comfort. Thank you.
Jessie, I invite you to come forward.
Oh, well, BYOK. All right.
Loudly into the microphone.
Okay, so most of you are here know that my father wasn't exactly a pillar of health. Let's be honest. But, you know, it is what it is. He was a real character, to say the least. His sense of humor and wit were nothing other than amazing, basically. Okay, so my dad was 1 in a million, which made him so special. He was literally the coolest dad ever. My friends always looked forward to coming over and gossiping with him. He was the most generous man I have ever known. He was always wanting to help out a friend in need, and a friend's friend in need, or it's just anybody. He had his battles. Life wasn't always so easy for my dad, but as of late, he bounced back. He had a lightness to him, and it was great to see him come alive again. He started bonding with Scott and making an effort to get to know him. He loved you, Scott. And I'm sorry. His favorite things, literally in life, were his car, Ben, and his grandkids. He really loved you guys, and I will say to Ben, you are his best friend. You gave Dad a reason to live, a reason to get up every day. He really loved you. He never said a bad thing about you if we were fighting or anything. He was just like, oh, Jess, you know, like. So I stopped going to him when we argued because it did not get the answer I wanted. But yeah, your relationship with Dad was truly special, and I mean, I think I can speak for Dad on how grateful he was to you. My last encounter with my dad was this past Tuesday night. We had a tasting for my wedding, and he wanted to be on time. That's another thing. So he showed up to my house 2 hours early. Yep. So we hung out. It was really nice. And then, so we went to this dinner, and we hit a couple obstacles on the way there. I won't name any names. But he really handled himself better than I've ever seen him handle himself in my life. And this dinner was over 2 hours, and we gave him an out several times. Dad, you can leave when you need to leave. He stayed the entire thing. He loved it. He was cool as a cucumber that night. That's right, Louie. The next day, I had the opportunity to tell my father how proud of him I was. That didn't come around a lot, that opportunity, so I'm so glad I was able to tell him because I feel really lucky. I just told him how far he'd come and that I was just so impressed with him. That's what I remember telling him, and I feel like he received it too, which was nice. I feel like he heard me. He was really excited for this wedding, and I was excited to, go down the aisle with him, and it sucks. What can you say? It sucks.
Sure.
I was looking forward to a first dance with him, and I just really am gonna miss him, and I love you, Dad, and I'm gonna miss you. I don't know what else to say.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Weird thing is I've been preparing for this for a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, I don't know. It didn't work. The profound sadness and grief that I feel is pretty tremendous. I have some notes. I didn't want to take up too much time, and everybody's pretty much said what I feel, but Dad was a real original guy. He was his own dude. He told me on Wednesday, the last time we spoke, just like Jessie said, that his car was his pride and joy. That was what he told me. So you can't make that up. You can't make that up. He was legitimately generous to a fault. Whether it was his last bite on his plate or the last dollar in his account, he would give it to you. Even if it meant he couldn't pay a bill. If he loved you, his job was to share with you and make you feel like it didn't make any difference to him. His grandchildren I was not what made him get up in the morning. His grandchildren and this wedding coming up were what made Dad get up in the morning. And I know that, okay? 3 people that I need to mention by name that helped me tremendously these last few years, other than my family, who's been obviously incredible. I need to thank Ricardo. Ricardo was Dad's car guy. And when I tell you that these last bunch of years, Ricardo was at the house almost every day, fixing something on the car, I'm not exaggerating. To the point where when we found Dad, the police were like, wait, you just come in the garage? And he's like, yeah, I just come in the garage. So Ricardo is one. Martha is another. And Martha cleaned for Dad, but also was his friend, as was Ricardo, please. But Martha was his friend and a confidant, and he truly loved her. And last but not least, somebody who couldn't be here today, but I know she's watching, Solange. I could not have done this without you. As much as you took care of Grandma, you helped Dad, whether it was spiritually, physically, mentally. He relied upon you, and he loved you. Finally, I just want to say, Dad, we will have lunch again in the sky someday. I love you.
We measure love not in time, but in grace, the joy with which they live, and the love that they leave behind. Merritt Malloy said it best, love doesn't die, people do. So Ben, you're going to feel that love for the rest of your life. Jessie and Scott, he'll be with you in a month and for the rest of your lives together. He's woven into the fabric of who you guys are as a couple and who you are as individuals. And for that, we're truly grateful. In a book called God Whispers, it's written, the true worth of a life is the story that it leaves behind. Tell that story well. Did he teach you about love? Absolutely, every day of his life. Did he personify genius or sensitivity? Sometimes, but most of the time, for sure. Did his life warn you of the danger of bitterness and anger? No question about that. As I stand and behold the eyes of those who mourn, I realize the only difference between people in this world is not their wealth, their fame, or their success. The only difference is those that had love in their life and those who did not. William Jeffrey Glazer had love in his life from the day he came into this world until his very final breath. As you heard, he was generous, he was loving, he was silly, he was fun. Born to Elaine and Max in October of 1946, just after the end of World War II, he grew up in Highland Park. School wasn't his thing, that's for sure. He was dyslexic, but he was super cool. He always had fun. Here was a guy who went to Lincoln Elementary School, Edgewood Middle School, and Highland Park High School. And for a brief while, he attended Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona. He conned his parents into sending money for as long as they would, telling them that he was in school even though he wasn't. He was hanging out in Arizona. And when they finally got wind that he was no longer in school, he announced that it was time to come home to work in the family business. He came home and worked for Regan Steiner Publishing, a successful Chicago business, for over 80 years. He worked there for more than 20. Vice president of sales, among other things. The company was responsible for 4-color printing pages, publishing People magazine, Time, Newsweek, Playboy. Sounds like a fun job. He met Lee in high school. Dated her, and then I'm told he picked you up hitchhiking. You were blessed with 2 beautiful children in Jessie and Ben. The 2 of you were raised in Deerfield. He was simply an amazing dad. Not a homework kind of dad, that's for sure. A hangout kind of dad. Hang out with the kids and the friends kind of dad. A Bulls game kind of dad. A good friend kind of dad. A one-of-a-kind dad. Your friends wanted to be at your house. I know that he encouraged Danny with music and other people that came by the house. He lifted everyone up. He was there, he was present. He had cool cars. A Datsun, a Porsche, an Acura NSX. And then there was a series of cars, car after car after car, as his driving got worse. Ricardo, thank you. You repaired a lot of cars. He was great at hanging out. He would give advice on girls, on hoops. Advice that even when you guys were young, advice that he gave back in the day was still pretty relevant today. It stood the test of time because he always did the right thing and he told you to do the right thing. It was useful advice. Here was a man who never liked dishonesty, who got along with all people. And after the business closed, I loved that he did what he truly loved to do. He started to coach basketball at Caruso. It became his passion in life. He loved it so much. He was involved in every one of his players' lives. He was involved with every ref, every game, every second. He was a basketball coach who didn't know a whole lot about the X's and O's and the plays that the kids needed to run, but he just knew how to connect with the team. He just knew how to connect with the kids. They loved him, and he loved it. He found a way to connect. He was a father figure. He could tell them right from wrong, and he really cared about each player, each friend, each family member. As I heard, as you all know, he lived life on the edge. That's who he is, was, and will always be. You're right, he never took care of himself. As much as you tried, as much as you offered, as much as you talked, he did it his way. He was a hippie at heart. He became physically shaky, unstable. You were worried that he would fall. You'd call him. Ben, your relationship with your dad is really remarkable. You'd call him every day. You'd tell him everything. He was able to commiserate. He was able to advise. He was able to laugh. These are your words, but you said he'd call you 10 to 12 times a day. You talked maybe 4 or 5 times a day, but he called 10 or 12 times. You went over to his house every day to check in on him. He was an amazing grandfather. He marveled at his 3 beautiful grandchildren. He marveled at your accomplishments. He was so proud of who you are. He couldn't believe how well adjusted, how beautiful, how wonderful each one. So close. And to each one of you, he gave all that he could. The doctor said after he was found at home that he had an enlarged heart. And I thought about that. I've thought about that a lot since you shared that with me. An enlarged heart for a medical condition is bad. But in the human condition, it's perfect. Because that's exactly what he had. He had a heart that just kept growing, adding Scott to the family, watching each one of you, knowing how much he loved. His heart just kept growing. In some ways till it exploded, until it stopped. His heart was huge, physically and metaphorically, because he could give, he could love as much as possible. His door was always open. He was generous to a fault. He enjoyed giving. He thought that no one should ever suffer over money. He loved his mom. He loved his Sadie the dog. He loved his friends. He loved his family. He loved the bulls. And he loved the cars that he drove. And he loved the bears. But most of all, he loved his family. His heart was all good. It just kept enlarging and enlarging and enlarging until it couldn't beat anymore. And so on Thursday, he woke up early. He had things to do. Ricardo was coming over. The car was coming back. and he simply collapsed of a heart attack. The medical examiner said that he died instantly. No suffer, no struggle. He didn't even know what happened. He was here one moment and then gone the next. He had lived a full life. He really was a good dude. He was excited for the wedding. He was content with his life. He lived the life that he wanted for as long as he could, and that was the only way that he wanted to live. He would not have been a good patient. He would not have been the right person to slowly fade away. So he died on his terms. And we're left holding the pieces. We're left putting the pieces back together. We're left with the memories. Simon and Garfunkel said it best. Time it was, and what a time it was. A time of innocence, a time of confidences. Long ago it must be, I have a photograph. Preserve your memories. They're all that's left you. I've come to understand that we really are in the business of preserving our memories. We're in the business of looking at pictures. We're in the business of cherishing those pictures. And we're in the business of holding on, living life as best we can, dancing on that dance floor at that wedding with unbridled joy, because that's how he lived. That's how he loved. And that's what he left us with. We say in the Jewish tradition, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may the memory of the righteous truly be a blessing. May Jeff's memory live on with all of us. May he rest in peace. Please rise. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Ashchina, Im Kedoshim Teharim Kezohar, Harakia Mazirim, Et Nishmat, William Glazer, Shalach Lolamo. God, full of compassion, dwelling on the heights and the depths, grant perfect rest under the wings of your presence to our loved one, to Jeff Glazer, who has entered eternity, a wonderful father and grandfather, father-in-law, relative, husband, partner, and friend, a brother, a teacher, a role model, a coach, someone who gave his all. He left it all out on the floor, who has now earned eternal rest. May his repose be for good. May he never be forgotten. At every funeral I've ever officiated at, I've said the following words: the dust returns to the earth, the spirit returns to God who gave it. It's only the house of the Spirit which we place within the earth. It's only the house of the Spirit, the vessel that held his soul, that gets cremated. The soul lives on. The soul returns to God. The soul is what we hold on to as we remember, as we think about him, as we know that he's now a part of us. And so his body gave out, but his soul lives forever. And so we honor that soul with the words of the Kaddish prayer. On the back of the service supplement, we say together, Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, ve'almad divrach hirutei v'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dekol Beit Yisrael, b'gala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mavorach le'olam omeh omaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudsha brichu, la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Useh shalom b'mromav, Hu yaseh shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort all who are bereaved, and let us say, Amen. Ohose shalom bimromav. Uyase shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru. Yimru. Amen. Yase shalom. Yase shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Go your way, for God has called you. Go your way, and may God be with you. May your righteousness go before you, and the glory of God receive you. Hamakom yinachem etchem, batok sha'ar avilei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you among all the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. May he rest in peace. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Shiva will continue in this room in just a few moments. Memorial contributions to your favorite charity would be appreciated. For the many people that are joining us on live stream, we thank you for joining. This concludes the live stream. For those of you who are here, I'm just going to ask everyone to sort of step to the rear of the room. There's also some treats in the lobby. You could go in there, and then we'll bring the family back in here in just a couple moments. This concludes the service.